Welcome everyone who's joined us. I'm Peter Bailey, I'm General Manager at Aura Information Security. Really good to have you here for our 7th in the Talking Tech series. This is a digital series that provides us with an opportunity to discuss interesting business matters together with the panel and with you as well, the audience who's joining us, and to help with key challenges you might face as business leaders around innovating and evolving issues. Over the next few months, we'll be discussing topics on key cybersecurity, connectivity, and cloud issues that business need to consider. And today's topic really is cyber-based, and it's around the state of the cyber nation, we've called it. So what is happening in cybersecurity around the world and in New Zealand, and what are the impacts on business? So I'm joined today by Hilary Walton. So Hilary, for those of you who've been in these sessions before, she is Chief Information Security Officer at Kordia Group. And hopefully we'll be joined by Kirsten Patterson a bit later on. So Kirsten is CEO of the Institute of Directors and obviously has some great insights from the director perspective for us. So hopefully she'll be online. So we've got about 45 minutes for the session. The first 25 minutes I will discuss with Hilary and hopefully Kirsten the state of the cyber nation. So I've got a bunch of questions that I'm keen to take them through. And then after that, we will switch over to you. So please feel free to use, there should be a Q&A button on your screen. If you'd like to submit questions, they'll go through our moderator and then come through the team to have a look at, and hopefully we can answer some of your questions. So to start off today's session, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in cybersecurity in New Zealand and globally, and I'm sure that Hilary will also have a few points to add on that as well. And just that you know as well, we will record these sessions as we've recorded the ones in the past, and if you're on our attendee list, we'll make sure that the link gets mailed out to you if you'd like to have a look at these a little bit later on. So 2020 was an incredibly interesting year for everyone, I think, and particularly for cybersecurity. And as we roll into 2021, everyone's wondering, well, what does 2021 have to hold? And some of the questions we ask is, you know, is it really that bad out there? We see a lot in the press, we hear a lot of hype. Companies come to sell us products and we wonder if we should actually buy them. And so are we actually seeing a big change in the cybersecurity landscape, or are things all right? So we've seen a big increase in cybersecurity over the years. I was looking at some stats for this session, and since 2018 through to 2020, there was an 11% globally, an 11% increase in security breaches. But that's interesting if we look back to 2014, so just 6 years ago, we've seen a 67% increase since 2014. So the trend is definitely up. We are definitely seeing a lot of attacks, and we're seeing hackers get more and more innovative in the kind of attacks that they're carrying out and the sorts of businesses that they're going after. So everyone from a small business with a few staff all the way up to massive organizations who are suffering really severe breaches. So to find out a little bit more around the New Zealand market, we carried out an annual survey. So Aura and Kordia do this every year. We go and survey a number of business leaders in the New Zealand market and find out how they're responding to security and what they're doing in their organizations. And you can certainly go to our website and grab a full version of the report. But from my side, I found it quite interesting, particularly in the training space. So in New Zealand, we see phishing attacks and scams as our main form of attack. And in our survey, we noticed that organizations are dropping the amount of training and staff awareness work that they're doing, which I think leaves them vulnerable to phishing style attacks. And that's quite a concern that organizations aren't taking that seriously, given that it's the main attack vector into organizations. So I think phishing is something we've been hearing about for quite a few years, and ransom attacks, and I think we'll continue to do that. Last year as well, we got a bit of a a fright with the DDoS attacks. So I think while DDoS has been a staple and always around, it wasn't something we'd necessarily highlighted as an upcoming trend for 2020. And so when we started seeing DDoS attacks being used as ransom, it was quite a surprise. I don't know, Hillary, if you had any thoughts around the DDoS that we saw last year and how organisations were responding to that? Sorry, Hillary, you're on mute still.
Thank you. That's probably because it's the first show of the year. I was just saying how great it is to be back on the show. And yeah, in terms of DDoS, so, you know, that method, that is really when cyber criminals really flood so much traffic into servers and websites that a business can't operate. And it's a lot of fake traffic that's been generated as well. So sometimes it's like a tsunami for organizations. So it can be really tricky to deal with. But the interesting thing about DDoS attacks is it's not a new attack. Like, it's actually a really dated attack. However, what we are seeing with the ones that we've seen sort of starting in August last year is that they have been increasing in sophistication, and cyber criminal groups are doing this sort of thing. And we just haven't seen that level of it before. And it's partly due to the number of devices that we now have on the internet as well. So as the internet has grown, it's created more opportunity for those DDoS attacks. And in terms of how organisations are dealing with it, well, you know, if we look at the research from CERT NZ, so CERT is a government agency where individuals and organisations report in cybersecurity incidents, and they saw massive increases during the period. And I think at once they had numbers peaking at 87 attacks on a unique New Zealand IP just in one day. So it is one of those attacks that, yes, organisations do need to mitigate for it. But I think a really important takeaway is it's not the only attack that we are seeing. So yes, you need to mitigate for DDoS, but you need to be mitigating for all the other attacks at the same time. So that's sort of the big takeaway for New Zealand organisations. While DDoS has been popular, we need to mitigate for everything along the way.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, Hillary. And I think for a lot of organisations where they're looking at cyber attack trends, and that's often the questions I know, Hillary, both you and I get asked is, well, what are the trends and what are we going to see this year? And, you know, there's certainly things we can see in the wider landscape, and both Hillary and I do a lot of research at an international level to see what's going on in the rest of the world. But there are always going to be things that we haven't been able to predict, or that become popular because hackers have realised that it's a good way to infiltrate your business. And so Hillary's point there around, you know, what should businesses be doing, what should they be aware of for trends, and how do they get ready for attacks? Well, really, it's around understanding your risk as a business. You know, as an organisation, if you don't understand where your risk lies, and you don't understand what areas of your organisation are vulnerable, then any attack, no matter what the trend, is going to affect you. So the more secure you are, the less of a target you make yourself, the lower the impact is going to be when you finally suffer an attack. So you know, a lot of people say, well, what should I do? Where do I start if I'm trying to get more secure? And the thing we always say is, you know, you've got to understand what your holes are. You can't fix your business, and you can't work on things unless you know where the gaps are. And I'm sure that's something you've seen, Hillary, in the work and research that you've done.
That's right. And if you look at the big themes in terms of cyber attacks, they actually remain reasonably the same. So malware continues to be, you know, on the big increase for organisations. So again, looking at the CERT data from CERT, they saw a 250% increase in malware from this time last year. So that's the biggest one they're seeing coming through. Also, phishing and credential harvesting is up there in the top two as well. So that's increasing quarter on quarter as well. Also, scams and fraud, unfortunately, you know, we are very trusting as a nation, and so that continues to be something that we still get hit with. And they might be scams of things around buying and selling goods, or, you know, following kind of extortion and blackmail and things like that as well. There's a bit of that in particular last year, and ransomware as well. And if you look at those top trends, those top four that I just spoke about, they're all really based around human interaction. So a lot of those attacks wouldn't happen if a human wasn't involved. So that sort of begs to the importance of that security awareness and making sure your staff are security conscious and know the right security behaviours to be protecting your organisation, you know, financially and reputationally as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think you know, definitely that human factor is a big deal. A lot of organisations seem to be spending budget on systems, and of course that's important to make sure you know what's going on within your information systems, and if you're being attacked. But most attacks we see are through that human factor, and the more that we can get that under control and ensure that staff understand the impact of their actions, the better. Thanks, Hilary. I'm going to move on to some questions now. Unfortunately, it looks like Kirsten has still not been able to join us. I'm just looking at my backstage crew. No sign of her yet. Right. Well, if you could bear with us, Hilary and I will work through some of these questions and give you some insights into what we're seeing globally in the space. So certainly from a governance perspective, and that's something that a lot of organisations are starting to get their heads around now, now that we're sort of moving past just the pure technical aspect of security and looking at the governance and risk side of things. So Hilary, I know you do work at a director level yourself and obviously in the governance space. So what do you see as the key things that board or management should be focusing on moving into 2021 for ensuring that they're staying secure?
So for me, it's really around security performance. You know, we need to treat cybersecurity and security the same way a board should treat financial risk or health and safety. They need to be looking at how security is performing. So that might include a monthly dashboard or some kind of monthly report that's clearly indicating kind of the metrics for security and then also the benchmarks so that they know whether it's within allowable limits in terms of how it's performing. So some of the types of metrics that are really common are things around awareness. So what kind of awareness messages have happened during the month? What's the level of cybersecurity training and you know, is that up to date? Has everyone completed that, or are some people that have expired and they haven't reset? Has there been any significant security incidents during the month? That's going to be a key one. But of course, a board has to know whether they're able to pick up on that kind of information. So how do you know that there hasn't been any significant security incidents? So that's about making sure that an organisation has visibility of its network so that it can spot that thing, those incidents quite quickly. And also the other thing is looking at what significant security risks the business has and are they within tolerable limits or not. That's really important to look at, and as a board you need to work out, are you comfortable with where those risks are? So boards and management need to keep an eye on security performance, because how else can you govern it?
Yeah, fantastic. No, thank you. And also from my side, I do quite a bit of work with boards and exec teams, helping them work on their security, and particularly from a governance perspective. I think the thing that I see a lot of the time is that senior management groups and boards are nervous about cybersecurity. It feels like it's an unknown. It feels a little bit scary, and it feels like a topic that's quite hard to get your head around. So I think for a lot of organisations, when you need to call on some expertise to give you some expert advice, I think you need to do that. But within boards and exec teams, you should have some level of working knowledge around cybersecurity, so that the terminology for some of the things that you're doing and the impacts that can have in your business should be understood by everyone around the table, not just bringing one specialist in to help you out. So there's certainly an education program for boards and exec teams to get their heads around it. They don't have to know all the technical details, but the same way that you know what a health and safety risk means for your business, you should know what a cybersecurity risk means for your business as well. Just moving across to industry working groups, and both of us are involved in industry working groups, Hilary. And there's always a lot of really interesting conversations that happen at those meetings, particularly with senior business leaders. And we talk about all sorts of topics, but cybersecurity sometimes comes up and sometimes doesn't. Do you find that those groups and discussions you're having that cybersecurity is getting enough attention, or do you think it's something that still needs some work?
It's a really good question, because I feel like cybersecurity is getting more attention. Like, it's much more in the media than we've seen before. The IOD, the Institute of Directors, has certainly helped raise it up as a board and senior management issue for organisations to deal with, really giving it that importance. We also had the privacy changes in New Zealand last year, and again, that raised up security as well, because security and privacy do sit side by side. So we are talking about it a lot more, which is great. However, I think it doesn't get enough funding and it doesn't get enough resources. So the truth is that much New Zealand organisations suffer from general lack of awareness of the cybersecurity risk, as you said. And so because of that, they're not spending enough on security. So why is that? Well, it is kind of hard because, you know, hackers are invisible, and then also you don't know when you're going to get attacked or how. And the investment that you're making in cybersecurity, it's primarily a cost-saving one. You know, you didn't have that event, and so it didn't cost you that money, rather than revenue growth. And I know companies do find it easier to invest in things that kind of give them that revenue growth. But it does continue to be a top issue for the CEOs that I talk to. And I personally think it could be the issue for organisations that can disrupt and ruin companies. But I still don't think it gets enough resource attached to that particular risk.
Yeah, look, I'd certainly agree. As technology becomes more and more important for all organisations, cybersecurity becomes a much bigger risk. With the groups that I've worked with, I think it certainly has reached the top table. I think, 8 years ago, and a bit more than that, since I first started with Aura, you would have a hard time getting cybersecurity discussed at a senior table or a director table. The fact that these conversations are now happening is good, and it means that, as you say, some funding is made available from organisations to make it work. I think the thing that we still continue to see, though, is well, it's not going to happen to me attitude. So there is some work done in that space, and a few boxes are ticked. But with the thought of, well, we're probably not going to suffer an attack. And being a consultancy, we're often on the other end of the phone when someone suddenly had an attack and is ringing us to say, well, look, we really need some help. And it's a bit late at that stage to suddenly start planning for an attack when you're in the middle of one. So it really is important that it's up at that level. I think it's getting there, but I think organisations have a little way to go, both with funding and with ensuring that they have adequate plans in place to be able to recover from one of these, and understanding the impact that that's going to have to their business. So yeah, I think you're right, Hilary. We definitely are seeing it as a topic, but not enough funding, unfortunately, flowing into that space yet.
If I could add to that, Peter, as well, just on that same kind of thread. So I think what does get funded in security is a lot of the security operations, the technical side, which is putting in the technical controls to make things happen. There's quite a bit of money funneling into that, but what I'm not seeing is more funding going into that more softer side of security, around awareness and governance and risk management, and people looking after policies and things like that. I think there's much more funding going into the technical side and that more softer side, but really important, because we just talked about the different types of attacks, and that are the most popular, malware and phishing and credential harvesting. That's actually where we need to protect organisations the most. So that's just a follow-up comment to what you're saying. Yeah,
and I think that there has been a propensity to treat cybersecurity as an IT issue. We all know that it sits under the IT manager. IT needs to deal with it, and so people look at the systems and how you fix the systems by using other systems, and there are a lot of good tools out there, and that needs to happen. But yeah, I'd agree. There's been a bit of a lack of focus on where else in the organisation does this impact, and what other bits and pieces are we not paying attention to when we're not just looking at the systems. I mean, you talked a bit there about sort of people and phishing attacks and scams and that. Same. And I know we've had conversations around the risk with third parties. So, not just looking at your own organisation, but looking at businesses that you transact with on a regular basis. And what does their security look like? Do you have a process to ensure that their security is up to scratch and that they're not going to put you at some risk as well? So a wider understanding of the impacts this will have across the business is really quite important, and is sometimes lacking at the top table. So we'll talk a little bit about media, because cybersecurity has been in the media quite a bit. Certainly last year, we saw such an increase in attacks off the back of COVID-19, and interestingly, we're now seeing organisations preparing with the vaccine rollouts again for hacking attacks. So phishing groups taking advantage of the vaccine rollout to see, can they hijack emails about that and get into people's email boxes. So we've certainly seen a bit of narrative in the media about the lack of sharing of security incident information and the difficulty for organisations to do that. So, now and again, we'll see something pop up in the press if it's big enough. But again, I think you and I know that there's a lot of attacks that go on in the background that we never see. What are your thoughts on that, and why do you think organisations are so reluctant to share this information?
Yeah, you're right, Peter. Cyber attacks are happening all the time, and the impact on economies is huge. But companies don't want to reveal that they've, suffered damage, and I guess they're worried about scaring off potential or actual customers that they have, maybe damaging their stock, and maybe even incurring potential legal liabilities. So I get it. But first of all, a company has to be aware that their network has been compromised. So that's kind of the first step. Often it's not reported because some companies aren't aware because they don't have that visibility. Second, they may know, but they believe that disclosing the information will negatively impact the confidence of their customers and their shareholders. So they're going to find every reason not to report it in the current environment, unless we create a new environment where it's not sort of suicidal for businesses to come clean. That they're, if we don't make that environment healthy for reporting incidents, then they're not going to do it. So I definitely think that disclosing, while it might cause some short-term damage or impact on a company's brand, I think it's going to go a big way to helping everyone in the industry, because zero knowledge is never good. So, and I think that what I'm hoping is we'll see this sea change where businesses who are talking to their customers about security incidents that they've had and how positively they've managed them and the better mitigations they've put in place, their customers will actually view them as trustworthy, and they'll get a lot of positive brand value from that as well, and loyal customers. But that's not to say we're not sharing information as IT and security professionals. It might just be that we're not sharing it so publicly. So there is lots of information sharing that does go on. I'm personally a member of a number of security trust groups. It happens a lot in government. There's a lot that goes on there, as you can imagine. But there are wider security trust groups that organisations can join as well. So, for example, the New Zealand Internet Task Force is one in New Zealand. You do need to be kind of nominated by a member as a trustworthy kind of member to be able to be part of it. But there is kind of rich information that does come through from those kind of vehicles as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. There are a number of groups that meet and essentially have Chatham House rules to discuss some of the incidents that are happening. But yeah, there does seem to be a sense that security is a bit of a dirty secret, and you don't want to talk too much about it outside the office, and you don't want people to know that you've had a breach. And I think what organisations need to start to understand is that most organisations have suffered some form of breach. Again, in the research we've done, the number of breaches that we've seen through 2020, has continued to increase, and we see, a lot more ransomware attacks and that come through. So we should be able to talk about it. The less we talk about it as well, the less we're able to coordinate and find ways to beat the hackers. So the hackers, I can guarantee you, are communicating on a regular basis through various blogs and groups that they belong to, and sharing ideas and sharing new ways of attacking. And if we're not sharing on the defending side, that doesn't help. Just a slight follow-up question on that one, Heather, and sorry, I know this isn't in the question pack, but I'm sure you can answer this.
Okay.
We've also seen legislation change come into place where if a company has a breach, they are now going to have to tell not only the Privacy Commissioner, but potentially their customers as well. I mean, do you think that's going to change some of the behaviour that we'll see in organisations around their willingness to share this information?
I think it has to, doesn't it? There's now a legislative requirement for companies to actually, notify customers and notify the Privacy Commissioner of serious breaches. So I think there's going to have to be a sea change of that. It's interesting. So that's been in since the 1st of December. I don't know if there have been any big data breaches that have been reported through that system yet, but I'm really hopeful that it will change behaviour. Because at the end of the day, let's say a company doesn't report and then it's found out, because it's always going to get found out on the dark web if the information is released over there and then all of this company information is kind of let loose. The company's going to be, it's going to be, they're going to, what's the term? People are going to know that it's happened to the company anyway. So they're behoved to tell when they should, treat it properly, positively, notify customers, be the caring organisation that looks out for people, and if they've caused harm for them, rather than keep it to themselves and then it comes out later, not under their own control.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got sort of one more question from my set at the moment that we'll discuss, Hilary, and then we'll go. I see we've got a few questions coming in from the audience. Please, if you've got other questions to ask, feel free to send them through, and we'll hop onto those in a second. But we're just going to talk a little bit about risk here. So from a risk perspective, there are many business risks that executives and boards need to consider, and we know that that's just massive. There's a real minefield now of risks that you got to trawl your way through, but particularly cybersecurity becoming a big one. What ones from a cybersecurity perspective do you think they should prioritise based on what's happening on the security horizon? So as we sort of look into the crystal ball for the upcoming few years.
Oh, you're right, Peter. Like, businesses are facing more and more business risks than ever. There is, financial risk, obviously, and particularly at this stage when they're trying to deal with COVID and survive through that. There's diversity inclusion, which is increasingly becoming a big risk because we know that non-diverse groups don't make as good of decisions as diverse groups. Health and safety, climate change, sustainability, and of course, cybersecurity is up there as well. So there's a lot of things for businesses to manage, a lot of fighting for airspace, I guess, with those different disciplines and things like that as well. But in terms of security, my kind of one risk that I'm thinking about a lot more for businesses, particularly with attacks like we saw with SolarWinds come through and kind of really highlight that supply chain threat, is that third party and supply chain risk management. There's probably a lot of businesses out there doing a reasonable job of looking after their own business's security, but we know that businesses don't just stop at their own border. They have all these partners and vendors and third parties that we're using. So how do you know that your third parties are meeting your security requirements in an ongoing way? You might assess them when you first start using them and work out, what the risks are and how to integrate them into your company safely. But how do you ensure ongoing that they're going to keep the data safe and really take care of the security from their end, because they're very much part of your ecosystem. So that's my big one for boards and management to kind of pick up with this year, is third party risk management.
Yeah, great, thank you. It looks like we've been joined by Kirsten now, so welcome, Kirsten. Thank you. Good to have you online.
Hi there, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Great, good to see you.
Oh, a real life lesson in what having too much cybersecurity can do to your systems.
Oh dear, yeah, that can be the case sometimes. We're just getting towards the end of the formal questions, but yes, we'll go back through some. So I might just, the last question Hilary was answering there, Kirsten, I might just flick to you on that one. And we're talking about risk perspective and what boards particularly should be prioritising from a risk perspective for security in the upcoming year. What are you seeing from boards that you deal with? What are they concerned about and looking at with cybersecurity risk?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the core things, they sound pretty boring actually when you summarise them down. I don't have all this sort of specific wonderful little app or little piece that they need to focus on. The core thing that comes back to is good culture. right? So do our boards have good risk culture in place? Are they focused on risk management? Do they have good security culture, good people culture? Because those are the things that are going to keep them safe. And how do boards get assurance over that? They get assurance over that by reporting. So making sure that there's good clarity of that reporting. And I heard Hilary, as I was coming on, about emphasising, those third-party reporting relationships and those pieces, getting that good support and knowing that you can test management, you've got good reporting processes in place.
Yeah, definitely, and certainly some of the conversations I've had with boards, understanding what's sitting in that reporting and what the impact is across the business is really important for them, and that good trusted relationship with their CISO or the security person in their business to give them that information.
Yeah, we often talk about it sort of similar to that health and safety stuff, right? That, sometimes boards go, well, actually, no health and safety issues is a sign of a good health and safety culture. We know that's not true. You are still employing human beings, so there will be issues and accidents and near misses and those sorts of things. And indications of a near miss culture and being able to report that are a really good indication of a cultural framework where information is able to sort of get filtered up without fear. And it's the same with cyber. It is so pervasive that if you've got a management team as a board that are telling you that there's no issues at all and everything's fine, well, we know that's probably unlikely.
Yes, definitely. I'm just going to go across to some of the Q&A questions we've had come in from the audience, and then we might pop back to a couple of the other questions after that. But there's one question here from Melanie, and she's asked, what do you think the rationale is for businesses to reduce their focus, I'm assuming on purely technical technical interventions and spend on training and awareness? Now, Hilary, I will certainly flick this over to you in a sec, because I know this is something you're really passionate about. But I think sort of some of the earlier points that we've alluded to around in New Zealand in particular, people do tend to be our weakest link, and most of the attacks that we see at Aura that we respond to are normally through human error, where someone has made a mistake because they don't understand the impact of what they're doing by clicking on a link or opening a particular email, and that sort of awareness program wrapped around them is really important. Hilary, from your side, what do you see?
Yeah, I don't know if it's reducing focus on the other side, but it's kind of balancing up this inequity that's been there for quite a while. And it's kind of making time for your employees to do work on that other thing, which is the awareness and the education. And, there are some really good tools and, programs out there around training and awareness now, e-learning, or, little cool videos for staff to watch, which organizations kind of can jump in and use straight away. But then also there is a lot that can be done kind of reasonably cost effectively, in-house as well. So it's really just trying to give organizations the time to do that awareness piece, because it is so important. So imagine if we didn't do that work on the health and safety side and just left it to the the safety bars and things like that. It wouldn't work out as well in terms of performance. So we need to think about it the same way in relation to security as well. Both are important, and I'm hoping, my kind of prediction is that going forward we will see a rise in these much more individuals working in governance and working in awareness, and bringing in a lot more diverse skill sets as well. Psychologists, I'll say that because I'm one, but also might be comms and marketing people, people who are really comfortable in that content creation zone as well. That's kind of one of my predictions for how we'll see security teams change.
Yeah, Kirsten, I'm not sure if that's something you've come across on the sort of training and awareness side, either within your own organisation or with organisations you deal with, and what the focus is there.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because to get awareness and support for training, there first needs to be an awareness and support of the issue in totality. And I know, Peter, you've touched a little bit on it before I could join, but the Director Sentiment Survey that we conducted at the end of last year found quite low and concerning levels of cyber awareness and discussion happening in boardrooms. Now, at our publicly listed end, it was high as 68%, and larger privately held 65%. but the overall average was only 54. Now that's a slight increase from 50 the year before. And if you get to the not-for-profit sector, which is a huge part of our community and a huge part of what supports New Zealand, only 33% of boards were actively discussing cyber risk issues. So, you know, you can't even get to the nuances of discussing the issues around it being a people issue if you've only got a third of the boards in that entire industry even discussing the issue at all. I'm hopeful that that'll be one of the big shifts that we see as a result of what's going to come out of the way we've changed our working style around COVID. So over the last year or so, I think everyone understands the importance now of good systems and the importance of people being well trained because they're not in the office. We can't see them, we can't manage them directly. Remote working means we've got to train our people better in a whole range of issues, and hopefully this will be one.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. There's an interesting question here around insurance, and this is something I get asked about quite a bit, and I'm sure both of you have dealt with this a little bit. So saying, you know, there's a lot of productizing going on where insurance companies are creating cyber risk insurance, or cyber insurance based on risk. How can they get an accurate enough picture of the security of an organization? You know, this person's asking, is it a marketing gimmick, or does it really help raise awareness? From my side, I mean, look, it is tricky, and we've certainly seen over the years insurance companies have got better and better at this and understanding a little bit about risk and how they can help organizations. But maybe KP, from your side, is this something that you find boards are discussing around cyber risk insurance, and how do they cope with that?
Yeah, insurance is a really big topic in boardrooms, particularly areas around D&O cover for directors, and cyber risk helps inform the risk profile of the organisation. So absolutely boards are focused from an insurance perspective, and getting good advice from organisations such as Aura and Kordia is going to be critical to organisations being really well prepared in that space. What we're seeing is a huge increase in insurance premiums across the board, particularly in D&O, and that's being informed by a lot of increasing activity by regulators in overseas jurisdictions, particularly Australia. So, you know, things like Privacy Act changes that we've seen here. I've got my little blue, CERT privacy robot on to sort of profile the importance of that. You know, and Australia's had that for a while. They've had cases with their regulators over there, huge fines. That's increasing insurance. So insurance is part of the picture, but it's not going to be the whole solution. You can't insure and forget.
Sorry, anything on your side, Hilary, from the insurance side of things?
I was just going to pick up on something that Kirsten said. So, you know, there is global shifts to organisations having to prove or line up against security controls. We're seeing that happen on international level. For example, the telecommunications bill that's coming in the UK. It's actually not for the telecommunications companies, it's for all their third-party suppliers who have to line up with all of these controls coming through as part of this bill. And obviously that supply chain doesn't just exist in the UK, it actually exists in different countries around the world. So that's having quite an impact. And I guess it's that measuring up against security frameworks that might provide insurance companies with a way to understand a organisation's security posture more. I think it would be really interesting if there was some kind of compulsory standard that, you know, organisations had to measure up against in various forms based on the types of risks that they're managing as an organisation. But yeah, so this is a global thing that is happening, and people have to think about it more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Peter, we know from our own example, which you very kindly, your team helped us with in 2019, a reasonably public cyber breach that ended up on the front page of the paper. Insurers would have said we were reasonably low risk. You know, who's going to care about the Institute of Directors? We got mixed up with a reasonably well-known hacker who misunderstood and thought we were part of a government department. So we got attacked that way, and we were incredibly grateful for having good insurance cover in place. So if you don't have it, I can recommend to make sure you get good advice.
Good, no, sounds good. I've got a couple more questions. I'm just conscious of time, so I've got a couple more questions from the audience that we'll go through, and I think actually the two I've got here divide themselves rather nicely between the two of you. So I might start with the first one, which is a little bit more technical, but KP, feel free to jump in if you'd like to. But this might be a bit more at you, Hilary. So saying our environment is changing rapidly from traditional internal network / systems with perimeter security to a pure cloud environment, with end users connecting to the internet from various networks. In my opinion, the old firewall protection into a secure network is no longer relevant. Besides user education, what should we be focusing on in our new environment of working anywhere at any time from any device?
This is something that a lot of organizations are looking at right now. Zero trust comes into play, and a lot of organizations are trying to figure out, well, what does that mean for me? And it's about actually making authentication based on different conditions. So it's not just on coming in through the outside shell, but as the person has, for example, the right firmware on their laptop and they've got some other things in place, and they're able to connect kind of that way. So I think it's Grant who raised that question is completely right. That is absolutely changing. And organizations need to be thinking about things like mobile device management and how they might cope with, BYOD, because, that is kind of out there in the wild and needs to be looked after. And then, how they're actually setting up their networks in terms of segmentation. And, there's a whole factor of things that come into play here. And it's one of those areas that, companies like Microsoft and things like that do have quite a bit of information out on already. And it's something that organizations need to think about as they think about what the next kind of environment and security layers look like.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you. And I think you're right. It's something a lot of organizations are grappling with now. And what does that mean for our data and our security, and how do we deal with that? The other question, KP, which is probably more for you, is around, we talked earlier about board dashboards, so security information for boards to be able to interpret what it is they need to understand. So there's a question here around what would be some of the cybersecurity items that would be good to report in the board dashboard. So from your experience, what are you seeing boards looking for? What kind of information are they after in those dashboards?
Well, that kind of looks like a bit of a Patsy question, because it gives me the perfect opportunity to sort of highlight the reporting of cybersecurity to boards. Here's one I prepared earlier for just such an occasion. So this is a joint publication that we've done at Aura. We're actually in the process of updating it as well, off the back of some of the lessons from ourselves and also lessons from many of the others over what's been a pretty chaotic 2020 in that space, and a number of areas in terms of things to be reporting on: business continuity planning, access management, information protection around policy, security awareness, incidents and threats, in terms of what's been the sort of types of incident reporting in terms of what's coming in, how many phishing scams, some of that. Again, think about that health and safety stuff, that near miss sort of things. What are your threats? Understand your business, what are the risks, and then what sort of controls have you got in place, and who's at risk around some of that, and then some of the compliance stuff, that privacy stuff, the compulsory breach notification pieces. How many people in the organisation have had training? How many people in the organisation have had training on Privacy Act obligations? Has your privacy officer had their training? So all of those good foundation stones which help create a safe culture, and then show that some reporting's getting through. So number of dashboard examples in there, and no doubt we'll in the chat box or in afterwards we'll be able to make sure that we can get copies of that out to everyone.
Yeah, great, thank you. Hilary, I know you work on these sorts of packs sometimes. Anything in particular that you like to add when you put a board pack together?
Yeah, so there are so many metrics that you can use, and I think Kirsten's actually rattled off all of the main ones, which is great. But yeah, definitely some of those people, you want to have a balance of people metrics, those technology metrics, and then process ones as well. So, but yeah, certainly reading that resource is a great place to start.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would like to add there is to say that, and when we created that pack with you guys, Kirsten, thing we looked at was very hard to create templates for this because every board has a very different set of requirements. So we've given ideas of types of reports, but you need to chat to your board and figure out, what is it that they really want to understand, and that's what goes into that report. So they need to be personalised for your organisation and think about what it is you really want to know. Great. Well, we're going to do a little bit of summing up as we come to the end of the session. We always try to do this at the end of each of these sessions and just give you as the audience something to take away. So just a single highlight and a thought. If you take nothing else away from the session, what would it be? So maybe Hilary, if we start with you, what would your one thing be if you'd like the audience to take an idea away with them?
Thanks, Peter. So mine is definitely about treating security like a business risk and resourcing it appropriately. So making sure you are getting those performance metrics, you're understanding how it's performing and thinking about it in that really multifaceted kind of business system of which it's a part, very much in the same way as you treat health and safety.
Yeah, great. Kirsten, a takeaway from you?
Yeah, a key one for me is that cyber is all of our responsibility. It's not just the responsibility of the CISO, it's not just the responsibility of that one digital director, if in fact you're able to ever find that unicorn and put them onto your board. So we're all responsible, just as we're all responsible for finance, we're all responsible for cybersecurity, whether that's as directors or whether that is as managers. So we need to treat it as a risk, as Hilary's outlined, and take responsibility for that and get informed. And adding on to that, make sure we get good partners.
Yeah, definitely. And the one for me is around knowing your risk level. We talked earlier around insurance and getting good insurance. Well, you can't get insured, you can't fix anything, you can't know what's going to happen in your business until you know what your risks are. So understand your risk level, know where your main gaps are in your business from a cybersecurity perspective, and then you can manage those. Doesn't always mean you can fix them, but at least you know they're there and you can do something to manage them. So I just want to talk briefly about our next Talking Tech session, which will be number 8 already. We've done quite a few of these. But our next Talking Tech session will be focused on the human element. So again, our recent Aura research revealed staff are not as secure as their managers may think. While 62% of New Zealand businesses say they carry out security training exercises with their staff, only 37% of Kiwis say they have received training on good cybersecurity practices. So a bit of a gap there. We'll be discussing this disconnect, providing a perspective on how to get started, do's and don'ts. Plus, we'll talk about what goes into designing an employee education program that resonates so your organisation can be more secure. We're still setting the date and locking in the guest speaker for this event, but we'll send out the details as soon as we have them. And then, yeah, so if you'd like to, ensure you register for that event, if you'd like to join that once that comes out. So, look, thank you very much for joining us today. Kirsten, sorry we couldn't have you from the start, but thank you very much for the part you joined us for. Some really good insights there and really enjoyed listening to that. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And Hilary, good to see you again. Always good to chat, and some great insights there as well from your experience in the business. Really enjoyed that conversation.
Thanks, Peter.
So thank you very much, everyone, and hopefully we will see you at the next Talking Tech session. Keep well and stay safe. Bye-bye.